So good afternoon. First of all, thank you for everyone's forbearance that we had some logistical challenges, was it meant the meeting's been put back till 2 o'clock, so thank you for that. To begin, Nick, could you lead us in an opening Karakia, please?
Karakia puto tēnei te mata tātai nei hoi. Tēnei taro rangi nui tuaki nei, tēnei taro papa tuanuku takoto nei. Tēnei taro rangi rau ko papa takoto nei. Kia ara rau te tapu wai o tāne ki raro tēnei tapu o nau mā te ao. Kāringa te ao e piri, kāringa te ko tāne e piri e tata, whakamaua kia tīna.
Tīna.
Hui e tā.
Thank you very much indeed. So, in just a moment, I'm just going to ask for introductions around the table. Before I do so, perhaps it's worth just framing why we're sitting here at this table. So, as you'll be aware, there have been a number of recent pieces of water and wastewater related legislation, and I've just been told that another set of instructions has been issued today. The most recent, as you know, is the Local Government Services Act 2025. The legislation sets out a range of financial, sustainability and compliance requirements. Effectively, as it means now that we have two regulatory groups, Tamata Arawai, who are going to watch over water quality, and we have an economic regulator in the form of the Commerce Commission, who under the legislation has new financial and performance expectations with a timetable of reporting requirements. So we are here to oversee the development of the pathway and plans that ensure these requirements are met through this committee's oversight and governance. However, it's not just about reporting. We're also seeking to improve services, resilience, and ensuring value for money for the people of Gisborne. So the journey to achieve this starts here today. So what I'd now like to do is, if we could go around the table, I will start with some introductions from members of the committee. Let us know who you are and who you represent. So my name is Nigel Thomas. I'm the independent chair of the committee. I've got a background in water going back 20 years and also in infrastructure going back even further than that, particularly in the areas of finance and risk. So if I could then ask Nadine.
Kia ora tātou, nau mai haramai ki tēnei komiti, particularly to our iwi members, a big thank you to you all, and also to our independent chair and independent member, Nigel and Michael, welcome. It's really important committee, as Nigel has just outlined, and it's a new space for all of us, so we've got a bit of a presentation that will outline it, but I just want to point out some of the things that we will be under increasing scrutiny over, the decisions that are made, the financial pricing, the model that we choose, all kind of laid out in legislation, and the accountability is an onus on people like myself. Tim is a lot stronger under this new legislation, so the committee is here to help keep everyone safe, ask the right questions, challenge us and support us on the journey to standing up this business unit. So kia ora tātou, thank you. And I'm the Chief Executive.
Tēnā tātou te whare. Ko nek tūpara tōku ingoa e uri au o te tai rāpiti. Mai pō tiki rua ki te ngai tāmanini. I'm here on this committee as a councillor. Coming from one of our Māori wards.
Kia ora, Ronald Nepe, Chief Exec for Te Rūnanga o Tūranganui Kiwa, and the current member of the Wastewater Management Committee. I've been involved in that for 20 plus years.
Yeah, kia ora, Barry Foster, I'm a councillor, 6th-term councillor. I was chair of the Infrastructure Committee for the last two triennials, and also I'm co-chair of the Wastewater Management Committee with Ronald.
Firstly, thank Nick for his karakia for us. Lovely to have us settled in this space. Penia Brown, also a member of the current Wastewater Management Committee, but also here as Chair of Chaitanga Mahaki Trust as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou, Terry Thompson, second term councillor.
Koutou, ko bitu para kātini ahau, moko nei, reti tonu ki ao Nick. I suppose I'm here today on behalf of Tā Manuhiri Tutu Puru Trust, so my Tā Manuhiri. I'm currently the kaihautu of that, or chief executive for the trust. Unfortunately, our trustees weren't able to be in attendance just due to short notice, but over the next little bit, we'll confirm who our Tā Manuhiri rep is. My background is in environmental policy, worked for government for a very long time, worked on Three Waters within the Department of Internal Affairs, in the Māori team working on all the parts of Three Waters. So very excited to be here and look at how we sort of move things forward. So kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, te mea tuatahi kei te mihi atu te konehira mō tō whānui tō karanga kia hau mō te hui nei. Te mea tuarua tēnā koe Nick mō tō Karakia. Hei whakapai te hui nei. Ko te aturangi nepia klampa hau, no tai rāwhiti, no nā iwi o te tai rāwhiti, no rongwhakaata me Ngāti Parau. So I'm here today representing Rongwhakaata as their recently appointed chairman.
My name is Michael Sage. I'm the second of the independent members on the committee. My background is about 40 years in corporate commercial law. I was a partner of Simpson Greason until the middle of last year before embarking on a governance-oriented career. Of relevance, I'm on two of the boards for water service CCOs, which we set up. I'm the chair of the North one, and I'm on the Northern one as well, which I think is something that's going to be of benefit to this committee. There's a huge amount of information sharing and cost sharing, I might add as well, that can be done between all the different water service organisations, be they in-house like this one, or in a CCO like in Plymouth and Brooklyn. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for the welcomes. Apologise on behalf of Air New Zealand for stuffing up everybody's day, but we're here.
Right. Well, kia ora tātou everyone. My name is Rehed Stoltz and I'm the Mayor at the Brisbane District Council, and I feel like blowing a trumpet today and say, yay, this is our first meeting of a very, very important committee. I do want to thank our iwi partners for being on this journey with us, and I know lots of our iwi partners have been on this journey with us for a very, very long time, so it's a continuation of a very important kaupapa for all of us. Also, a warm welcome to Nigel and Michael. Thank you for joining us and bringing your expertise to our table, and then also acknowledgement of our staff. There's a lot of work that is going into this and have to go into this, but we look forward to working with and alongside you. So thank you for that.
Kia ora tātou, kia ora tātou manuhiri, tēnā kōra, Michael, ko Nigel, ko Rhonda Tibula hau, he kaikauni he rawari Māori ahau. Kei te mihi atu kia tātou, ngā wairua whakapā o ngā mātua tipuna i roto i tēnā iwi o tātou. Nō reira huri rauna, ia ngai tātou, Māori atu, Pākehā atu, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora, Rhonda.
Kia ora, I'm Leo Kelsner, the Three Waters Manager for Council.
Kia ora tātou, I'm Tim Barry Tokuingua. I'm the Director of Community Lifelines here at Council.
I'm just conscious that these meetings run because we have certain people behind us who are often unappreciated. So could I just ask if you could introduce yourselves and tell everybody who you are?
Jill Simpson, Governance Advisor for Council, and I'll be doing your minutes for today.
Tere Moanakingi, Senior Governance Advisor for Council, and I'll be looking after your standing orders and your new chapter.
Just to remind everybody that we are streaming live on YouTube. And could I just ask for some introductions on the other side for one or two of our other key players?
Kia ora. My name is Pauline Foreman. I'm the Chief Financial Officer So with water services directly overseeing the terms of financial sustainability, but making sure that we've got the revenue sufficiency, the investment sufficiency and the financing sufficiency.
Kia ora tātou, ko Jocelyn Allen Takuingoa. I'm the Director of Sustainable Futures. So in our portfolio we have strategic planning and the resource management policy planning function, as well as the regulatory arm in consenting across the natural built environment and also building services and climate change, as well as environmental science and monitoring.
Kia ora, ko Michelle Fry Takuingoa. I'm the Director of Livable Communities, and within my portfolio we have land management, sustainable land use, biodiversity, biosecurity. So yeah, that's the one that's here.
Thank you very much.
Staff down here
And I'm just looking at the table in front of us. Could we perhaps have some additional?
Afternoon, my name is Aaron Feast. I'm a principal advisor in the water team, working mostly in the space.
Kia ora tātou, my name's Simon June. I'm the asset manager for infrastructure working for council.
Thank you very much indeed.
And Judith.
Judith Robertson, I'm Water Manager of Operations.
And I'm Colin Oliver, councillor, like to keep your finger in all the pies.
Welcome to the meeting. Okay, we'll start working through the agenda. So to begin with, apologies.
But apology for Councillor Rio.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, so just move that forward. We'll have a mover, please.
Apologies from Ranina Proctor, Anthony White.
I'll move.
Seconder? All in favour? Aye. Thank you. Okay, now declarations of interest. None? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Moving on.
There's a declaration over here.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise.
Also on the Marae Taha Incorporation as well. To sort of flag that.
We'll have that noted.
Yeah,
thank you very much indeed. In terms of the governance work plan, we're going to have everything that's on the work plan is actually in the presentations today. So I don't think there was anything to cover now. If not, we'll move on. I did want to point out that the terms of reference for the committee are included. They're included for information and to set the boundaries for this committee that the committee will operate within. But I did want to point out to everyone that noting how rapidly local water done well is developing and with new legislation arriving today as we speak, that I suggest that we consider reviewing these at the end of the year just to make sure that. So moving forward from that, the other two reports which will be the report providing an update on the IWMC and Three Waters operations, will come up later in the agenda. So moving on to any leave of absence. None. Acknowledgements and tributes. None. Thank you. Public input and petitions. Okay. Extraordinary business. Thank you. Notices of motion. Okay. None. And adjourned business. I would point out this is the first meeting, so I wasn't expecting to see anything under this particular title. So then, we can move to page 6 for the first report. These reports from the Chief Executive and staff are for information. So if we begin with the first, which is the Interim Water Management Committee briefing on local waters done well. If I now look to Leo and Tim to take us through the report and the presentation, I'm noting that you have an excellent presentation in the pack. I would be very keen for the committee to be walked through the presentation, if you can make the time.
Yes.
Excuse me. I'd just like to make a request before we start, just to set the scene and set the right tone, in my view. Don't know what page it is, but it's the page, a few pages into the report, that says key features. Page 12, is it? Page 12. and it has an icon just below, or just above key features.
The handshaking?
The handshake, yes.
Yes.
So my suggestion is that treaty partners, which is halfway down, get moved to the top so that we set the scene respectfully in terms of what that handshake means.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Tim, Leo, if you're happy to continue.
Sure, I will present that. We thought this inaugural committee needed a recap on how we got here, so it'll be a reorientation for some in the room and might be an introduction to some others. So we put this slide pack together for that purpose. As you know, it's available within the pack, so I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I'm going to speak to each slide. Leo is here to nudge me if I get something wrong. I might try and Pauline also, and we've also got some staff members at the back. But through the chair, we may allow questions maybe at the end so we can get through this. So moving to our first slide, just a reminder of what responsibility entails in terms of assets. This is about the full reticulated asset base. So that means from source water from the receiving environment to the receiving environment. In delivering all that, we carry around roughly 60 full-time equivalents, split equally between staff in council and contractors outside of council. And some of our managers are here today. They introduced themselves, so really important to us to introduce themselves at the start of this meeting. Core national drivers, the chair has already outlined already, but I'll reiterate now. So renewal backlogs, resilience to weather-related vulnerabilities, growth pressures within service areas, step change required and regulatory compliance. All of these issues exist to greater or less effect within our region. So from that position, this has been a fair reform for us. Stepping through how we got where we are now, local water done well was a redirection from the previous government's Three Waters reform. One of the key features was it put the decision of the lot back into the hands of councils, and essentially the interim legislation at the time prescribed 5 possible variants, 2 of which simply didn't apply to our area, and we narrowed down to 2 options, those being an internal business case or a council-controlled organisation. The council-controlled organisation model was ultimately rejected for a few reasons. Initially, it had a higher setup costs. It had a high public support was for the independent business unit. Over 90% of our population who responded were in favour of that model. There was some access risks to local government funding through the LGFA, perceived higher borrowing costs, affordability implications, and a dilution to the unitary council efficiencies. That we're seeing amalgamation around the country in all sorts of areas. So council drafted the double service delivery plan and submitted it in September last year. It was approved in October. Go on to the next slide. So what is an internal business unit? Well, it's an internal business unit that is just that. It looks after water and water alone. It's ring-fenced, which essentially means it's a financial quarantine, which means restricted use of the capital within it for water alone. It tracks its expenditure and everything separately from the rest of council's assets, and there's no cross-contamination with other things. So you can't fix a pothole or build a bus stop on the way to fixing your pipe. Essentially, that's what it means. So with this model, we have elected member involvement. We have deeper partnership with mana whenua under Te Tiriti. Our modelling also showed financial benefit in this, retaining local government funding access, preserves local decision making, and it is also flexible to shifting solutions at later dates. So we remain open to multi-council models, which could possibly even be brought upon us. Quick few words about the Water Service Delivery Plan. The Water Service Delivery Plan was a mandatory 30-year strategic document required by the DIA of all water entities. So, for instance, our neighbours in the Hawke Bay put a Water Service Delivery Plan together that amalgamated Napier City, Hastings District and Central Hawke's Bay. We did our own one, Whitehall did their own one, and everyone who wasn't in this setting up as an incorporated CCO had a water service delivery plan, so every entity had to do it. Basically, it's a blueprint for how council would deliver water services that is both financially sustainable and compliant with national standards. So, as mentioned, it's a mandatory 30-year strategic document. Every entity had to produce one. And basically it's built around the premise of having an entity stand up by the 1st of July 2027. It aims to strengthen governance and accountability and develop a 30-year strategy aligned also with a long-term plan within council. And it has to demonstrate financial sustainability by the end of its first year of operation. So that will be the end of June 28. Okay. To demonstrate financial sustainability, the business unit must prove it can pay for itself through cost recovery and debt servicing, such as staying within local government finance 500% debt to revenue ratio with some relative play. It will require investment. It demonstrate investment benchmarking against other entities as well, and has to match CapEx to exceed asset depreciation, to match or exceed asset depreciation, sorry. Ring fencing again, water pays for water with no cross subsidies. Within this payment, we're expecting some changes. I've been notified. One was the transition from the 10% general rate contribution to a more targeted solution to actual beneficiaries, and potential with metering for future volumetric charging as part of the revenue equation. So strengthening governance, we have set this committee for that purpose with the inclusion of external experience, so we are ready for, we're ready for this new legislation to be enacted. The water service strategy, which we are developing it now, will be the roadmap council develops to transition their water operations, or the operating manual that proves a financially and operationally independent entity. The strategy will define how the IBU will achieve its financial separation by 1st of July 2027 with ring fencing and debt to access funding benefits. And Commerce Commission, sorry, the economic regulator will benchmark the business unit against others on cost and asset management allocations and metrics. So regulation is one of the most consequential things of this reform. It's really important to us. Taumata Arawai handles safety and environmental standards. Taumata Arawai was started in 2021, I believe, with water quality regulation, and then 2023 moved into environmental standards. The Commerce Commission serves as the economic regulator. Commerce Commission's role is to ensure that water suppliers, as we are natural monopolies, invest efficiently and provide value for money. So that's the purpose of the regulation. The key tools they use is information disclosure. That's the main blunt instrument. That's the one that came out today. It's a primary tool being used. And essentially that's public disclosure and transparency of finance and asset and service quality metrics. There'll be a lot said about that in the next week, so if anything, I'd point you towards what the main legal, Water New Zealand and firms say about it. They'll pump out a bunch of documents in the coming week. Price quality regulation is also on the agenda. This basically sets allowable prices and imposes service quality standards that utilities must meet and replicates competitive market discipline where there is none. The regulator might eventually, when it matures a bit more, when all its industry choose price quality paths to control the maximum price of charges and minimum service levels required for our customers. Also on the horizon's potential for consumer protection, so a regime which might include customer service metrics as well. Right, the business unit establishment has a number of moving but closely connected parts to be operational by July 1st, 2027. Overriding this is a project planning and management team who will be able to provide in complete form at the next committee. We're still getting a few people in place here. And it includes completing the following things: the water servicing strategy outlined earlier, something called the Strategic Asset Management Plan, or SAMP for short. This is the document that bridges the gap between the Council's overall goals and BAU. So it explains how assets deliver levels of service. Another document that's critical is Investment and Delivery Plan, the IDP. This was outlined in the Water Service Delivery Plan already, but it basically turns the Strategic Asset Management Plan into reality. What's included in that is a 10 to 30 year financial roadmap, which details CapEx and OpEx over that time, how that will be funded through rates, charges and debt, procurement and project delivery, so workforce capacity, procurement strategy can be assessed. Quarterly reports beginning April this year will start rolling and are templated, and financial sustainability, so proving that we are self-fundable by June 2028. This also needs to merge with the Council's LTP process as well, which is quite a lot to get all together, but it actually all will work together. Okay, milestones, key milestones. Today, Commerce Commission set information disclosure requirements, so we'll report on that at the next committee. 30th of April, the first quarterly update for the Water Service Delivery Plan is required. This will track the performance against our Water Service Delivery Plan that we put in place in September last year. That is a templated response to the EIA. On June 26, internal business units will demonstrate how financial ring fencing will work. In March 27, we anticipate credit rating issued around that time. Primarily, this is done to access better quality lending through the New Zealand Local Government Funding Agency. 1st of July 27 is a hard deadline for all new service delivery models around the country. June 28th to demonstrate financial sustainability. So that's what we're working to in terms of the process.
One thing we wanted to mention within this presentation was a key contract that has come up for renewal, which is our operations and maintenance contract for our 3 waters program. So that's a service provider that works in close synergy with our internal council team, providing services to maintain the network and critical infrastructure provision. So our current contract comes to an end in June 2027. So right now we're working through a process of reviewing the existing contract to get it in a position where we're ready to go to market, tender to market, sort of early to mid this year, for looking to then bring a report to council in regards to our assessment of those tenderers and our recommendation for the future provider of the service. So this particular contract is, as I say, a fundamental part of our operating ability to maintain levels of service and continuity in that. So we just wanted to mention that is quite a large piece of work that the 3 Waters team is working on.
Okay, anything else you wanted to add before we... So I'm intensely conscious that it's a wonderful presentation. It makes it all sound very, very simple. I would point out to everyone around the table that those are some exceptionally challenging timeframes. So if I open the floor, first of all, to the committee, and anyone who would like to ask any questions of Tim and Leo in respect to that presentation.
Something that struck my eye was, why are we only applying for our credit rating at the end of this year? Why are we not getting on track with that? And that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, do we have a vague idea? Are we going to get an A, a B, a C, or do we have absolutely no idea?
For the chair, the reason is you do the credit rating usually after an annual report. It's the best time to get that, and so we're going through the process now of getting the tendering associated with it. So when that will land, they go through the process after that, so therefore it comes in the next year. The second part of that, we have a shadow rating, which means we have advice with our external providers, which is PwC, with our Treasury, and that shadow credit rating, they do the methodology of both the other credit rating, which is Fitch and Standard & Poor's, and it's around about an AA, a slightly lower for one of them over the other, but basically it's in comparisons to the other unitaries.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Just to Leo, the current contract that ends next year and the new one, how much of a difference is there between the two? With what we're doing, this kind of new work, so is the old contract extended by another 50%, 20%?
Through the chair, so that's our contract provider for those network operations and maintenance. So the existing contract covers all factors that are in balance with the provision of services from our team. So basically they're fundamental to keeping the network running. They're the team on the ground when there's an issue with, say, water supply, we've got a mains break or something, they're the ones there that are repairing it. So it's critical. The new contract will have the old structure when we look at the schedules of activity within our network as a baseline, and the information that the team have learned over the 7 years of that contract operating will be taken into ensuring that levels of service are maintained and opportunities for improvement are included in the contract. that new contract, we won't know where that sits until we've gone to market and then got those tenders back and then assess those accordingly. To then report on what that will mean for the next contract term period.
Thank you, Chair. One question, sorry. A little bit business as usual, and so iwi, considering looking at the tenders and that, they have the opportunity to go outside of this group and talk to council about what options there are for locals to participate in a contract of this size as well. So you'll have everything in that contract review position that anybody can look at the tender and go at it.
Through the chair, the contract will work through the protocols for local council for going to market for that process, but it will be a general open tender to the market, given its extent.
Sorry, Teddy, I noticed you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I'm just wondering the parameters or scope of the stormwater. Will some of that be taken from the roading contracts, or just wondering where that sort of finishes and starts?
It's one of the operational challenges of the ring fencing that we'll have to do. So with the three waters, there's one area that exists around the country is a little bit of a lack of clarity around where stormwater turns into drainage. So that's an issue. I'd also say with the contract we have there, it also includes some elements of drainage management at present, which would also have to be separated, but there's no reason why it wouldn't still be in the same contract. But that means the scope of that. The contracts at present include some things outside of what is ring fenced at present.
So will these contracts align with the roading contracts? Do they align, or?
Not by dates, but there is some alignment there. There's alignment in scope, but not by dates.
I'm conscious that obviously this group is going to be setting that pathway, and some of the work, all the points that you're raising are some of the challenges that they're going to have to solve. So they probably can't answer that question yet because they have to look into how they're going to make that work. It's all right, Barry?
Yeah, thanks. Just on that before, does our standard procurement policy, is that going to be in place, and the same local content in it will be applicable? So we'll be applying that to the tendering process?
Yeah, while every procurement can be slightly different, they all need to work to government procurement rules, so these will be no different. So it's fair to expect similar type of contracts that we are getting elsewhere, but it's undecided yet. It's a process we have to work through.
With this being rolled out nationwide, is there new players coming to the party who have not been there before because it's such a big environment?
Not noticeably. Not noticeably. There's more incumbents who are actually more embedded, maybe.
Yeah, cool.
Go ahead.
Just 2 points. One, I suppose just wanting to lift it up, acknowledging this is the first sort of inaugural meeting, so I'm probably going to ask questions that may have already been discussed, but sort of coming back to our terms of reference and being very clear around the role of this committee and what they will be doing. And so I acknowledge in the document, and leading into my next question around the strategy. I'd like to sort of understand, what is the plan for the water strategy and the role of this committee in relation to that, acknowledging that we've sort of got, it's going to be a 30-year plan. I think that's important in terms of looking at how we prioritise some of our areas, and especially acknowledging that things are going to have to move fast. So I'm very interested to understand the timeline for the development of that strategy, and will this committee be approving that strategy? So that's my first question.
Through the chair, we are working through that timeline process now, and within council to understand the factors and approach with regard to this committee and council as a whole, given its importance as as Tim talked to, the criticality of aligning with the long-term plan as well, and the strategic approach around that. So before the next committee, we'll certainly have a very clear understanding, and it will be in motion in regards to the critical approach to that, to ensure that the water service strategy meets obligations in regards to ensuring all parties are involved.
From an operational point of view, from an iwi perspective, we would like to be engaged in the drafting of that strategy. It's probably going to be me, but yeah, we'd like to be involved in that in terms of moving forward. And then my second point is just in relation to the treaty partnership, just coming back to your point around ensuring that that is at the forefront in terms of this committee moving forward, and bringing it up in terms of acknowledging that. And I just want to note, and I've sent emails just around this, the Tāmanuhiri being informed on Tuesday formally about this meeting. We had raised these concerns previously, so I just wanted to note that. But we are keen to work together and progress this work.
So just before leaving that, in terms of governance, to remember that the strategy would come to this committee, who will review and recommend, but the approval is by the council.
Can I just, through the chair, make a comment just in terms of the strategy? So that's set out in the Water Services Act. So it's got a schedule of the things that are required to be within there. So just for example, for those of you that might be interested, it includes things around resilience, how you're going to address climate change and natural hazard impacts, regulatory compliance, your financial sustainability, your support for your housing growth, and how you're going to act in the consumer's best interest. So it's a whole lot of stuff that's bundled. Some exciting, some not so.
If I may, just picking up from that point, the water services strategy is essentially a long-term business plan for the business unit. So that will be the absolute key document that we'll be focusing on as a committee in the medium-term future. So it really will need a very deep, hands-on level of attention from everyone. There are two lenses that I just want to share with you that I intend to bring to this committee and into that process in particular. One of them is the importance of planning. So I'm just picking up from Leo's point. There's a lot to be done, and there will be a logical batting order in which to do all of that stuff. And we'll find that the time frames are quite compressed. There will be some real pressure on. So I think the importance of having a really good, coherent plan that's visible to everyone is something that I know is very much in Leo's and Tim's sights, and certainly endorse that process. I don't think you can overplan these processes. The second thing is that with all of the important things that come to this committee, and the current O&M contract about to expire is a good example of that. One of the things that I think as a committee we need to be conscious of is the need to not just roll things over as status quo. We need to be prepared to do things differently, to challenge old thinking. That's not to say that there's anything wrong with old thinking, but we need to challenge it because there may be room to do things better. And that's, we need to be careful to not cross from governance into management and doing that. You know, we're not going to do in Tim's jobs, but I think this committee will really add value, and I certainly hope to do that personally by challenging the thinking on these things. So taking that as an example, is there a better way of getting O&M services out of contractors, which, and we may have 30, 40 boxes that we want to take, you know, for instance, better involvement for iwi providers as well, and we need to challenge things.
Karakia?
Thank you. So when I raised that point earlier, with key features and the handshake at the top, with treaty partner halfway down the page, my thinking was that a handshake looks like a partnership. and that treaty partners should be right under key features in that partnership, and signaling that. Then I skip to page 22 and I see handshake as tender. Tender to market. So maybe I got the icons confused, but that's what it means to me. And I note that this is a interim committee. I also note that it's going to become a standing committee. When does that happen and what does that journey look like?
So I might be able to answer this question if I may through the chair. So the intention was to get to the point where the business unit is operational and standing up in 2027, and at that point, or if not before these triennial elections, we would be looking at reviewing what the committee structures are looking like and whether or not we morph into something else or it continues as is. I think one of the key things that we're really interested in observing what happens with the Commerce Commission is the whole idea around separated governance and what does that mean going forward, because there's been some conversations at this stage with internal business units. They're okay with how they're operating like this, but it was raised at one of the meetings about whether or not more scrutiny would be put onto councils with internal business units as to whether or not that governance needs to be separate. So I guess it's a bit of we'll just work our way through to the 2027 stand-up date. If anything happens in between that time, we'll come back to the committee and discuss that. But that's kind of where the interim was.
Thank you. So, if I'm understanding correctly, the interim committee is this committee until it changes to the standing committee, and at the moment the time frame from that is in 2027. Thank you.
Around the table, please, Nick.
Just a note I see in the water services delivery plan requirements under the regulations to achieve financial sustainability by 30th June 2028. There was a provision for loan in there and order to help with that, but eventually it looks like that really will come back on my path. It feels like therefore either a reduction in current other services or an increase in rates. Is that likely?
So through the chair, what we've calculated, and I think Pauline can correct me if I'm wrong, was about $100 extra would go, because what happens in your accounting and ring fencing services to a business unit, you can no longer spread the costs of the water services across the district, so that would mean that there would be potentially a reduction in the areas that are on non-reticulated services and an increase in the areas that are receiving reticulated services, and we worked it out to be approximately $100 per household. And so you will see a consequential increase in that space. One of the things around these the regulations that have been set up is to ensure that council are investing at the level required to provide the drinking water standards required and wastewater standards that are required as set out in the legislation. And it's up to the council to have to work out how they're going to fund it. So that where the whole push towards amalgamating and trying to get better economies of scale through larger water entities would then relieve the rates burden. We've chosen a business unit, so we want to work out how, as you say, we deliver our other services in order to be able to provide the revenue that is needed to fund this water unit.
I'm going to make a supplementary comment then, to the Chair. And if that's the case, it looks likely at some point we may reach the scenario where we will be charging for water. We'd be measuring and metering and putting that use onto community. Just what it noted therefore that I think that is an incredible imposition on a community where water should be a basic human right. And in our community, we have a difficulty in accessing all kinds of service and support. And for water to fall under that, I think, is a travesty. Not of our making, but just of the time that we live. I have no idea what a solution to that might be or an alternative to that, but I'd like this committee to know that it's sit there. And we're being challenged on a basic human right for human beings to have access to those fundamental, simple things for our well-being. Thank you.
Councillor Tupara, and what I might just get on to the is that as of today with the reporting requirements, so we are now essentially being treated as a utility provider. So whilst whilst no one's debating that the water isn't a fundamental provider, the infrastructure that provides the water to the communities, that is the concern, in making sure that the councils and the water providers have got that at an adequate level so that the communities can receive the best possible service that can be.
May I make a supplementary comment about that as well, through the chair? The right, particularly in the rohe of the Tairawhiti, a large percentage of whom are Māori, we had full and unimpeded access to the utility of water. And that had been removed from us when we were removed from land, and our land was removed and placed under the authority of somebody else. That somebody else is now asking us to pay for that, to pay for the loss and the deprivation that was created by that loss. And whilst it, again, I don't have the answer to that, it is what happened here in the Tairawhiti, the Māori communities. And by removing our access, replacing it with another utility that creates an asset, now we're being asked to pay for that. I think that's a travesty. And just having that noted in the minds and the considerations of the committee.
Absolutely, I think it's a very good point too. Well made. And I think now that we've sort of started to dig into this, we're talking about two issues. We're talking about water and we're talking about infrastructure. I would have thought that infrastructure was paid for within rates. So in terms of water and the infrastructure to actually supply that, well, the water's God given, and as Nick has made the point already, we did have our rights and we do have our rights. But more importantly, it's something that that should be a right. It should be a right. And today, with the climate being what it is, and the amount of rain that we're getting, one would have thought that we would have an excess of water rather than a drought of water.
I'm happy to note that. I would point out to everyone that the Local Government Water Services Act 2025, okay, just pointing out that we have a legislative position. Michael, do you want to add something?
Yes, I do. The legislation that Nigel has referred to does set the outer edges of the sandpit that we've got to work within. So one of the key things that this committee will need to focus on is affordability for the community. The regime of having to charge for water and wastewater services is set by government, and we just have to work that in the best way possible. There will be a tightrope that this business unit will need to walk with a number of competing pressures on it. One of them being the need to comply with environmental standards, drinking water standards. Another being the cap that the Commerce Commission will set on the ability of the business unit to charge. We are, and you will be pleased to hear, I mean, this is where one part of government is charged with making sure that consumers aren't overcharged. But sitting over the top of all of that, there are real life affordability issues for the community, for everyone in the community, that we'll always need to juggle. Because although we now have water and wastewater services being charged for, or they will be charged for separately and taken out of rate, out of the same pocket, and the combined impact is still the same for ratepayers. So I think that is something that, statement of the obvious, I guess, we'll be very, very keenly focused on.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
Go ahead. Mr. Chair, finance question. So whilst costs and revenues are ring-fenced, are the SOPs also ring-fenced?
Are the assets also ring-fenced?
Yeah, we account for them, and we account them for each of the wastewater separately, the water supply and stormwater in terms of assets on the balance sheet. So they'll have their own balance sheet, so yes.
Is that where the credit rating will come from?
The credit rating has come from council. Their overall revenue, their total revenue, etc. So that's a credit rating will be on the council say. But in order to do the additional capital investment that is needed in the water supply, council has to become credit rated.
So, I'm assuming then here that in terms of the capital raising business unit needs, will still also be here in terms of recommendations, etc.
But remember, review and recommendation comes to this committee, then it goes to the council. The round table, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And one question is very similar. So the depreciation will be able to ring fence is what Ronald was asking. All the things that belong to this table will be where our depreciation comes from. We won't have the roads in L1 and stuff like that.
Correct.
So we can still operate on a good depreciation ratio here. The council might be in a terrible spot.
I'm looking at our CFO over there. I don't think that's where. But no, interesting question. So, any other questions before we move on?
I do have a couple others, just coming off the discussion just now. That credit rating, therefore, is a credit rating based on the whole of council. I think that's unfortunate, particularly if we're going to ring fence the asset for water, because water has done exceptionally well. And I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but the Wastewater Committee has been very efficient in the way that we have spent budget, controlled budget, and managed those assets to the point that it's even reflected in the reports on how well wastewater has done. And I would not like that blemished by other activities of council, which I'm pretty sure I'm not pointing finger anywhere, but where we are having to spread our credibility across other parts of council. And wastewater has worked exceptionally well, I'd like to think, over the time that I've spent on that committee to get to where it is, under some very trying times. And now it's been considered that we should be propping up other areas for a credit rating to come back to ourselves. I think it's unfortunate that we're locked into that and don't have a capability to establish a credit rating based purely on the activities of water.
For the Chair, there's two elements associated with this. There's overall council to work and what they need to do, but each of the activities have a separate sub-measure. And so when you're talking about, they have a 500% that they can borrow over their revenue. So each of those are considered within those elements, and then you actually have council per se to be able to do the whole thing. So where you're talking within the early days, wastewater is near enough up to 500%. So the water supply goes, overall, it goes from where it starts to where over the 10 years of the three activities is 374%. You've got headrooms, but we need to work within those sub-limits. So that's where you say they're actually ring-fenced in terms of their ability and those measures that they need to be working towards.
I feel like I'm trying to hold back to give others an opportunity. But I do have one final point, and that is around representation and partnership. And all the way through this document, I mean, the presentation is called Tā Tātou Wai, Tā Tātou Mana. And I'm particularly, although our focus is on the why, on the water, I'm just wanting to acknowledge the mana part of that title and the deliberate inclusion of that. That goes back to representation. And the representation for this interim committee looks like it's following the same pattern as the Wastewater Management Committee. But four, but there are two other iwi in this district. So that's six. Whether or not there's going to be an allowance for that, I don't know. The Waitangi Tribunal has already decided there is an allowance for that. So just a whakaaro for our committee, and also in the Wastewater Management Committee, we had a partnership co-chairmanship of that committee, which is dutifully serviced by Councillor Foster and committee member Nepi to carry us through all of that time. I'm wondering whether or not there is a consideration for that level of partnership to give acknowledgement to tā tātou mana, which is the title of our presentation.
We can note that.
Thank you.
Okay, so just looking around the table, are we happy with any other questions for now? I'm conscious that it was a comprehensive presentation, but it is a journey that we're going to be taking. If we're happy, no other questions. I'm conscious we do have other councillors in the room. Just checking that they don't have any other questions. So if they don't, okay. In which case, the motion is that the committee receives the report.
That.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. I'm just checking that there's no one against. Excellent. Thank you very much. In which case, I'd like to move us on now, please, to the second report, which is on Three Waters infrastructure and operational performance. And again, if I can let Leo and Tim take the lead.
Through the chair, so yes, this report is in regards to our infrastructure and operational performance. It is over quite an extended period. It's from July to December 2025. The first time we've been able to report to this. Just talking to the summary and very brief context is what the report entails is that we've met the stormwater, wastewater and drinking water operational functions and capital programs are progressing well. We're meeting levels of service. The performance criteria that I have included in the report also shows how we fare against KPIs or key performance indicators that we have to adhere to and report on from a national perspective. And as I talked to within that summary, budget-wise, we're actually tracking at the point at the end of December slightly under budget, which is, as I reported to, is in general a timing factor of how coming into December how things play out. We're half that month charged within the month of December and the balance of payments comes in January. But it's quite an extensive report, so happy to respond to any questions from the report.
Okay, thank you very much. So the floor is open for any questions from anyone. We'll take the report as read.
The customer satisfaction, how do you measure that?
The customer satisfaction aspect comes from the timing and the reviews around our referrals for service process. So that's a measure of response and friction back from our RFSs, and we've got the numbers of RFSs that have been worked through for each one of the waters in that period, so that's how that's determined.
Other questions? Just giving you a moment. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I did mention it previously, but just to congratulate staff. It's interim reports, that's reports that enunciate that they come under budget. It's always a good thing, so congratulations for that and the work and the effort that staff is putting in. It really is appreciated. Because it's very difficult going back out into community when budget levels aren't being met, and it's comforting to know that we are getting some of our stuff right, but still being able to deliver quality service. So I appreciate that. I note in this report the reo that's in here about our wai a whātaune, wai kino, wakaranea, wai, and that we are deliberate in our practice to acknowledge the Māori community, our cultural context, and our use of the reo. And I also note that much of our infrastructure falls in places like Te Karaka Whāta Tutu, Wainake, Mangapoike, and other places that are of significant ancestral connection and whakapapa to our communities. And having those presented with in a respectful manner that acknowledges not only the importance of the work and infrastructure in those places, but the mana of those places. taumana in dealing with things. And just to acknowledge the staff input into that, and particularly on page 29 under rangatiratanga, acknowledging tangata whenua leadership and participation. And that goes back to the comments I made under the previous report, that in paragraph 25, that's a genuine trust. And it's good to see staff being very deliberate in that and taking the opportunity when they can to acknowledge that in page 29, paragraph 28, that from a Māori worldview, water is taonga, and that the health of the awa and the moana is inseparable from the well-being of people and place. And those statements, I think, are very important for us to include in what is otherwise a very technical type of reporting, that we also have a cultural value and a cultural practice that we have here, and staff are recognising that through the report. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
I just want to add to what Nick has just said in terms of Te Ao Māori. Māori believe in the interconnectedness of everything, both living and non-living, and the interconnectedness, water is a major part of that. Water connects us all. So just emphasising that point.
Yeah,
Larry.
I probably should have raised it on the last paper, but it's applicable to this one as well, because it's about you saying that there's no boundaries at the moment when drains are going to be, where the boundaries are for drains and stormwater. And we've got a lot of work that is done internally, is a lot of work on drain on public property, on private properties as well. So when will you get an idea of what that boundary is? I mean, I've actually raised this right from the word go when Three Waters was first introduced, because it was really loose where that, we're a region that's got a lot of drains, and drainage is really important, especially at the moment with all our extreme weather events and everything. So, we need to know where that boundary is, where that boundary of drains and stormwater is, where that finishes. So when will that be decided?
Through the chair, just to bring context to what's being reported in this report, it is assets that are identified in the urban catchment. So it's urban related. So within the city or within township boundaries, we're working on specific assets that fall within that realm that are specific to stormwater management. From a national perspective, they are working through that process of, I suppose, delineation of responsibility around stormwater, because it does move through, right from headlands right the way through catchments into the urban network through roads and whatnot. So that's I suppose a wider challenge that nationally they're grappling with. But certainly within regards to what happens in Three Waters at the moment, it is specific assets that are related to our urban stormwater system.
I'm just thinking of all the drains that are outside our urban environment that feed into our urban environment, drains and streams. So it's mind boggles actually.
Mr. Chair, Leah, I'm just interested, and there might be a question for later, Mr. Chair, around the environmental impact the processes taken to ensure our drains are clean and clear. So I'll be interested in developing with the strategy what that looks like going forward.
Thank you. So going around the committee members, any other questions on this report? Yes, sir.
The question from the back. Point 20, last paragraph. Key risks continue in relation to the consent processes on the risk of the TRI, trees on the TRI falling and taking out our water supply. Is there any progress on this issue?
And the risk of sounding like a repeat, Councillor Older, yes, we are progressing this. We hope to have some incentive options in front of us as soon tomorrow, luckily, to be able to push the button on. For the committee, this relates to our water pipeline, one of our known risks that feeds our city, most of our water supply, and is subject to terrain and potential risk from weather events and just land subsidence events, both. It's well recognised as our largest risk. It was the most affected one of our assets in the last, in Gabrielle. We are hoping to progress something very shortly, Councillor.
Okay, so just want to check, is everyone if everyone's happy, no other questions? In which case, the motion is that the committee receives the report and have a mover. And a seconder, all in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much indeed. Now that was the last item on the agenda, so perhaps I could ask Nick or Karakia.
Kia, mutu ngā tātou nei ui, mauhihiri paurarama, te ahoi roto mārama I roto, tēnā te pau ka te pau ka eke ngā te pau e nei kōrero, ka mā te ariki, ka mā te tauira, ka puta ki te whai au ki te ao mārama, hui te ora, hui te mārama, haumi e, hui e.
In that case, I'd just to say again to Tim and Leo, two excellent reports, very informative, and before this meeting